Welcome to the Sales Queen podcast, where we teach women how to turn their skills into sales and monetize their message so they can finally sell with the clarity, confidence, and certainty that they've always wanted to. No longer does the game of sales need to be an old boys club. It's time for you to sell like a queen. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sales Queen podcast. I am so excited to be here with Stefanie Gass. She is a top 25 podcaster in the world in the category of entrepreneurship. She's a CEO, wife, boy mom, coffee lover, and hashtag PJs all day enthusiast. We're going to be talking all about podcasting today, all about doing business God's way, and how to grow a successful online business. So, Stefanie, I am so excited, and selfishly, I have a million questions to ask you. So thanks for being here.
Yay. Well, I'm ready for them. Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, as we start the beginning of every show, I'd love for you to share with us a little bit of how did you get into this world? You're a mom, you are a wife. A lot of people have fallen into this world in so many different ways. So I'm selfishly so curious just to hear kind of how this all got started. And then you can kind of bring us up to speed on obviously your tremendous success.
Sure. So I went to college to be in finance and accounting, which is hilarious now because that is not what I do and definitely not what I'm good at, but stable. So they say. So got into corporate America. And by the age of 27, I was a financial controller at a solar company. And that was fine. And that was fun because I wasn't married. I didn't have a family. And so I was able to work a lot of hours. It was a startup here where we live. And it was really fun. It kind of showed me the first glimpse of success. And I really grabbed onto that and I loved it so much. And so I chased after that and quickly, grew in the company, was going to Spain and Germany and all of those things and had really risen the corporate ladder until the ladder got pushed out from under me and they closed down the plant that I was working at. And so I actually got laid off. They offered me a job in Germany, but at the time, I was newly engaged. We wanted to get married and start a family here near our families. And so I passed on that opportunity and I was left with this decision of, am I going to go and find another corporate job or should I see what else is out there? And at this time, my husband and I, he was still my fiance at the time, were talking about, maybe you should find something where you can work from home. Have you ever thought about doing something from home? And so I thought, well, we do want to have kids. Let's see what's out there. And so funny enough, my mom had just joined a network marketing company. This was back, oh my goodness, I don't know, 2012 or something like that. It was still kind of new, like it wasn't all the rage yet. And she joins this company and tells me, I'm going to be a millionaire with this skincare. Like, do you want to do it with me? And I thought, well, that must be what I'm supposed to do. So I ended up joining a network marketing company. And since I didn't have another job, I just went all in. And man, like when I go all in on something, I go all in. So within about 4 years, I had gotten to the top 1% of that company, walked the stages. I had the big bonus checks. We had a son at that time, had gotten married. And really what happened for me, Megan, is that it had become a huge idol in my life. The success, the recognition, the money, the achievement. And so all of that was my 100% focus. And I ended up walking the stage. It's like the pinnacle of like, you made it.
Yeah.
I remember getting off and thinking to myself, like, I feel the same. Like you finally get to like, this is the mountaintop. This is it. Getting off and thinking, I really feel the same. Well, that I ignored it, kept pushing. And within a couple of years, what happened was I had put all my eggs in one basket. It wasn't my basket. And so the company had done a restructure. People were jumping to the newest things because now network marketing was super hot. We had everybody going to the leggings and the lipsticks and all the stuff. And basically my whole downline dispersed out from underneath me. And within 2 years, it was a fraction of the income that it had been. No matter how hard I worked, I couldn't get back there.
Wow.
And so what happened, to make a long story very short, I ended up going through a massive identity crisis in 2016 because I was no longer successful. I was no longer the girl who made it. And I had just had my second son. So I was also going through like new mom and learning the body changes I was going through and identity. And I was growing in my faith really actively at that time. And so God really brought me to this place where it was rock bottom.
Hmm.
I call 2016 like my Britney Spears year. Remember when she like shaved her head and she's like, "Who am I?" And like hitting the car with the umbrella. It's like
Yeah.
it was very confusing. It was a very confusing year because who was I if I wasn't going to be successful in network marketing? So I kind of jumped around thing to thing trying to find myself. I was a blogger for a minute. I started making t-shirts on Amazon merch. Uh, and I kind of was trying to find my way, but all the while I kept coming back to God and asking, who am I if I am not my success? And so I went through a whole process, this beautiful pruning process that God helped me with of I actually wrote on a sheet of paper, who am I supposed to be? And it said, a patient mom, an intentional wife, you're healthy again, like you're giving in your business, like all these things that felt completely unattainable at the time. So the very first thing I did was invest in a gym I couldn't afford, and I got my health under control, and I started taking step by step in the right direction to become the woman on the paper that I had journaled out with God in this moment.
Hmm.
And one thing I started to hear this whisper was, start talking to these women that you're called to serve. So I started going live on Facebook with really no clarity about what I was supposed to teach them, or because I felt like, man, I failed at, at this thing. Like, but I did know how to connect with people. I did know how to sell and grow something out of social media at the time. So that's what I started talking about. And people would get in the chat and ask me questions, and I'd start kind of coaching people through these live videos. My kids would run around in the back because they were little tiny. And pretty soon, Megan, people started to ask me, these women in this group I had built on Facebook started to ask me, do you coach? And I was like, I guess, sure, let's do a call. And so I started taking these coaching clients, and they started to call them clarity calls. And so they named it, they gave me the clarity, but it was so slow. I mean, slow as molasses. My brand was all over the place. I was spending endless hours everywhere. I was 5 to 6 hours a day on Instagram. I had built a huge following, but it was not translating into money. And I'll share more on that story in a little bit here. But
Yeah.
I was praying and praying and praying and praying, and God said, start a podcast. And so all of that kind of came to that big culmination, that one moment where everything got super clear for me in 2018. And it's been this beautiful journey to now growing a God-centered business through my podcast. A couple thousand students have gone through the courses. I help other women start podcasts, get clear on what their online business will be. And I work way less than I ever used to. And I personally don't use Instagram for my company or my business at all. And it's exploded since then. And so lots of things in there that I'm sure you have questions on, but that's how I got to right here.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I actually found you because you were suggested as an Instagram friend to follow. And then the first
How
thing that I
funny.
saw was your peace out post from a couple years ago or whatever. And I was so intrigued by that because I'm the opposite and I've run everything through Instagram for the
Okay.
past 7 years. But that's what I love. And I really want to have a conversation about that because I think when priorities change in your life, like right now I don't have children, right?
Mhm.
So I'm in that phase of my own life where I can work 10 hours a day because I love it
Sure.
and I want to, and that's the season that I'm in. But that's not the season that everybody's in, nor is it something that is sustainable if you
Right.
really want to build a life and not, hustle and burn out and all these different things. And I personally have gone through a lot of that in the last year too, where now I've scaled back and I'm just enjoying like and figuring out, hey, my worth is not my success. It's not how hard I work, different things. So yeah, we can either pick up where you left off in that story, or if you want to jump to like the current, because I know you're all about running your business in less than 2 hours a week without social media. So how did you end up kind of staking your claim as that being part of your value proposition?
Mhm.
And like, I guess what happened from there?
Yeah. So I think my story will come through as I tell you what happened with social media.
Yeah, cool.
So I was intentionally growing on Instagram. That was a huge player, so I thought. And so I had grown to over 40,000 followers just organically, right? Like connecting with people and the liking and the following and all the stuff. And we'd gotten these posts up over 750 likes per post. There were, hundreds, 500 people that would watch stories, all of that. But it was, I felt like I was capitalizing on my kids. Like that's as blatant as I can be about every moment that happened in my life. I had to capture it because it had to go on stories to connect with someone. And so my life started to feel inauthentic. It started to feel that I was almost living my life through this screen. Like I couldn't really drop into any moment because it had to be captured. And so I call it my discernment alarms started going off. I'd been doing this, gosh, for years, like 7 years or something like that. And we finally got into this big place. And I'm like, but God, it's working. But yet I felt so much anxiety about it. And I really didn't enjoy it anymore. I would check my phone and it would say 5 hours a day on this app. And I'm going, okay, if this isn't feeling good, I really have to test it because by that point, we were, I don't know, definitely a multi six-figure business already, but I had the podcast, I had Instagram, nothing paid traffic at all at that point. And so I got to this place of like, where's the money all really coming from? Like, let's see what's really going on. I want to test this out because the 5 hours a day I'm spending here, if I charge $800 an hour for coaching, is that worth my time? And so, and even my team's time. And so what we did is I actually started getting off on the weekends and I started to feel like I would delete the apps completely. And I started to feel something that I hadn't felt. I felt my life. It was like I didn't need my phone in my hand and I didn't feel triggered to check it. There was nothing pulling on me. I felt like I could live and experience things without having to take a picture of it anymore. And so that started to happen. That went on for a couple of years. And then I really felt convicted by God to do a fast from Instagram. So I don't know, it was probably 2.5 years ago now. I said, I'm going to get rid of it for 30 days. Like us as a company, no one's to go on. Don't go there at all. Don't check my DMs. No one's to post. I'm not going to get on. We're not going to do anything with specifically Instagram was our big pain point. I never really got on any other platform. I just really I just didn't have time because I was always on Instagram. So we get off completely and we track this thing for 30 days. And what I find is that actually made more revenue. Actually, the list grew faster. The podcast grew. And I had so much time. I had over 15 to 20 more hours in that one per week that I started having all this clarity. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have fresh content. I have ideas. I should run this thing. I had so much clarity. It was like this distraction that I didn't know was there was completely removed. And I was able to become the visionary and the CEO of growth in my company. And so then I thought, okay, let's get back on now. Now that I know that, I'll just scale back. So I get back on Instagram, Megan. My 750 likes had gone to 25 when we started posting again. The views were completely gone. It was completely gone. Like everything I had worked for 7 years was completely gone. And what that
Wow.
did for me, it didn't make me like panic. Oh no, I have to rebuild it. It went, this is exactly what is wrong with this. If I
Hmm.
can't go take a sabbatical to pour into myself and my family and my faith for 30 days and come back and everything's gone, why on earth would I waste my time on a platform like this? I want a
Mhm.
platform that doesn't expire, that has no shelf life. So after I had proven it had made more money for the company, everything else had grown, I said, let's go 6 months. So we stayed off for 6 more months. The company completely exploded. We passed $500,000 in revenue. All this crazy stuff happened. The team grew. It was like the favor of God was on me letting go and surrendering this app that everyone said I had to have.
Hmm.
And so since then, we got on for a while or whatever. But at the end of the day, I felt so convicted, like I'm completely done, never gone back. Everything's exploded. And I think part of what I teach is showing women, why do you believe what you believe to be true when it comes to sales and marketing? Why is it the truth for you?
Yep.
Because so often, if you go look at your bank account and you track your leads and you see what's actually happening in your business, you will get clarity extremely quickly that
Yep.
social media is not actually working, but we're so scared to look at it and we're so scared to let it go that we stay and we stay, even though it's causing anxiety and frustration and all that. So that's what happened for me. And I'm sure you have lots of feedback on that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's no, like, what I think actually is very harmful for people is when we have business coaches or they follow somebody on social media, whatever, that says like, this is the one way to do it. In
Yeah.
the same way that I know for me, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, that actually what stopped a lot of my progression and my growth for a long time was thinking that there was like, I had to be in on the new, latest, greatest, tactic, blah, 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 chasing that thing. And I think just that, like you said, the spirit of discernment, like if you feel a check in your spirit about like, this is not giving me peace, I think one really powerful thing as a successful entrepreneur that we all have to learn is the difference between, this feels yucky to me because it's hard and I'm growing and it's something that I need to get over because I'm growing, and that's the uncomfortability, or genuinely like, this is a red flag in my spirit and God's telling me no, and I need to lay this down and surrender.
Yeah.
And with that, understand that God's asking me to surrender because he's in alignment with my goals and he actually wants what's better for me and he has something better for me. And that's what I love about your story, is that you were obedient and then that opened the door to favor and blessing, like you said.
Right. Yeah. And so I think as we look at social media in general, some people that follow me have done the same and been extreme and said like, "Oh my gosh, I feel this so much in the depths of my spirit, like I don't want to be there." And
Yeah.
so I challenge them to get off for a while and to test it and to track their metrics and what happens in I use podcasting for people to grow an audience. So let's
Yep.
look at what happens in your business when we get off of this and we focus all in on this other thing, to use
Mm-hmm.
that as your method. And then I have people who, like you, maybe they enjoy it or they want to just have a certain presence there, and that's I think different for each person, because God may ask you to be somewhere. He may ask you to be on social media for a reason, and that's okay too. So listening to, like Megan said, your spirit, but being very data driven in why
Mm,
you're doing what you're doing instead of just following what everyone else is doing.
amen. Yep.
I explain it like I felt like I was sitting in an invisible prison, and I was in this prison, and I'm sitting in this prison and I have to be there and I have to post and I have to make a new reel because reels are hot and I got to repurpose it all over here. And I never realized the door was open. Like
Yeah.
I could get up and walk out and say, I don't have to sit in here. No one actually put me there but me. And so those are the questions I want you all to start asking yourself about the way that you're showing up in your business and your life.
Yeah.
Why are you doing what you're doing? Just start asking those questions, start looking at the sales and the leads and the information. If you don't want to be somewhere, who says you have to?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So how did you end up, obviously podcasts are very successful for you, which is amazing. I think a lot of people who are watching and listening to this will ask, well, I don't have a large audience, or is podcasting for everyone, just like is Facebook for everyone or Instagram for everyone? Or how do you navigate when you're coaching people? Are you advising everyone to start a podcast? And if so, why do you believe that that's the best thing for people? And what's
Mhm.
kind of your compilation of, do this, step one, step two, step three, for how people can start growing that audience with ultimately the goal of growing a 6 or 7 figure business?
Yeah. So I think of your online business, or even if you have a brick and mortar, but I think a lot of people listening probably have an online business of some kind, as an upside down triangle. And so at the top of your triangle is your top of funnel. And most people believe social media is going to fill my top of funnel. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I believe, go wrong. Because with the landscape of social media, you have 24 hours for anybody to see anything. Only 1 to 10% of your followers ever will see anything that you post. It
Yep.
takes you 4 times the amount of time to create something, because it's video content, because it has to be edited and all of this stuff. And we are serving a world where people have 8 seconds of an attention span. So when you
Mm-hmm.
put them in a place like social media, I want you to imagine that they're walking into a stadium and everybody is screaming at the top of their lungs at the same time. Look at this, look at this. Hi, over here, check this out. Everyone's screaming at the same time, and their 8 seconds of attention is like that's what's going on. And you're over here trying to actually get someone's attention inside that stadium. And my question to you is that working for your top of funnel? And unless you have a lot of money to put into Facebook ads, which great, if you make over 200, 300K in revenue, go for it. That's a great way to grow top of funnel. But for most people who are starting, or you're not at that level, what do you do to grow your leads at the top of your funnel?
Yep.
And I believe we have to create something that has no shelf life, that's long form, and that creates trust. So your options are you can blog and write, which is fine for some people, but I've seen that it takes a really long time for that to start getting traction, and not always, but that's what I've experienced with my clients who are bloggers. Then you have video. So you could do like YouTube, you could host your own videos. That's great. And especially for people that have a visual brand, like you're a makeup artist or a hairstylist, or you need to show people how to decorate cakes. Sure, I think video can be a great platform for you. But for 95% of people, I think podcasting is the answer. Why? Because people are so distracted, because we have 8 seconds, they're multitasking. So as they're driving to school, they're listening. As they are cooking dinner, they're listening. On the stair climber, they're listening. And what happens for podcasting is that you create trust and rapport with your listener super quickly. We can get a
Yep.
sale in one episode. Somebody finds my podcast, and I'll tell you how it actually works to grow an audience, because I teach some other stuff for podcasting that's really helpful. But they find you and they listen to the show. Within one episode, they'll buy from me. And it's because I'm not in a distracted place. They're consuming for 20 minutes, going super deep with me, connecting. I'm already getting them a result in 20 minutes. And they're like, where do I work with her?
Yep.
So then they go down the funnel, and I have people use a community and email marketing to nurture. And then at the very bottom, we coach or we do an online course. That's it. I don't have my students also have social. They don't also have to do anything, because the podcast serves as their top of funnel. So what was your secondary off that, Megan? Because you had another question related to that.
Yeah, I think you were going to go into it next. So, like, should everybody have a podcast? And then, if they do have a podcast, or if they're going to start a podcast, but they feel like they don't have a large audience or
Oh, yes.
positioning or influence, they're like totally new. They're like, maybe I could be an entrepreneur. What do you know? Like, and they have all these doubts about like who would listen to me, these
Oh,
kinds of
yes.
things. Yeah.
Okay, good. So does everybody have a podcast? I think if you want to have an online business or any business where you get online clientele, you
Yeah.
have to pick your long form. Does it have to be a podcast? No. But do I believe podcasting is the fastest way to grow your audience? Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe that because of the reasons I said. Also, it's the least saturated of everything that I've talked about today. And the way that it works, I just want you to understand this. Okay, you have zero audience today. Absolutely none. So people make the mistake of thinking, I'll go grow an audience on social media, then I'll start a podcast. No, it doesn't work that way. What you do is you set up your podcast where it works for you. So I teach podcasting SEO, where it's strategic. The things that we put in our podcast titles, those search terms work to bring people in. The way that we structure the keywords throughout your podcast page when people land there, that matters. The way that we talk to people inside the episodes, we drive traffic. We do giveaways to get them to share the podcast. We have so much going on that allows you to position your podcast in a way that the SEO and the way that people are sharing it is actually working for you. There's no algorithm that's shoving your podcast downward, only bringing it upward.
Yep.
And so your podcast works. So do I think you should do it when you have an audience of zero? Absolutely. If that's the number one thing I would change, I would have started my podcast as the number one thing before I had a website, Megan, before I had anything. I would have started the show, because the podcast would have been growing the audience all this time as I got all the other foundational things put in place.
Yeah.
Now, your doubts. Will anybody listen? Who am I? Like, everything's going to come against you to start anything new.
Yep.
Everything
Amen.
new that you're called to do in your entire life will feel impossible. It will feel hard. You'll feel confused. You'll feel like an imposter, because the number one thing, right, that the enemy wants is for you not to do anything.
Amen.
But God says that with anything we can do anything with him who gives us strength. And so you going, you know what? I do have something I've done in my life that is helpful to people 2 steps behind me. That's where we go so wrong in our mindset. We focus on talking to people where we are. So we get intimidated. But you're not talking to that person. You're talking to somebody who's over here just trying to get where you are. So there's no pressure for you to be perfect or know it all. And podcasting, what's beautiful about it, it's the easiest way to get clarity, because you're working through your feelings and you're learning as you podcast. I've rebranded 3 times in 4.5 years, and I'm finally there. It's like What if I started to get it perfect? I would have never started at all.
Yeah.
So, yes, do it and allow the podcast to be the thing that grows your audience. And of course, if you also want to be on social, great. But the beauty is, this is something that 4 years from now, people are still listening to your first 10 episodes and it's still
Yep.
growing your leads and it's cultivating. The number one thing I hear, Megan, is they say, I heard you on someone else's show, or I found you by typing something in randomly. I found you. I'm like, oh, imagine that. And then they say, and I binged your content so much that I ended up working with you. They just
Yep.
binged it because it's free, it's helpful, and they can do it while they run their life.
Yeah. I love what you said about choose your long form as one of the first things that you do. I've never heard anybody say that before. And I think that that is just such a clear way of casting a direction, especially for those of us who coach women, because we literally run 17 hats at all times. Like, we're the carpool, we're usually the secondary provider in our family, we're mom, we're wife, we're got to pick up the groceries, we're all these different things. And so where I think a lot of people struggle, or even women in business get really discouraged, is when they feel like they have to buy into a business model that is constantly just that chasing. And the other thing that my husband and I talk about a lot too is, it's interesting, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this. The internet marketing world, because you've been around, I've been around, let's say people who have been around for a decade. We were all like in our 20s 10 years ago or whatever, or like late 20s, early 30s. Now we like are married and we have families and we want to go to bed at 9:30, and we like don't want this life of like, I want to just look cool and have a billion followers and blah blah blah. I think that more and more people are like, I want to make an impact. Like,
Yeah.
I want to change the world. And of course, there's still, people in this camp, of course. But I have been noticing like a major shift of this like anti-hustle culture that I love, where I'm like, hey, how do we make a huge impact and live in our God-given purpose and financially provide for our family in a way that we don't have to choose between being a boss babe or
Yeah.
having a husband or being a successful mom, these different things. And I think the way that you're coaching and something as simple as, hey, choosing your long form and then building a business around how I get leads, I think that's super helpful for people. And I know that one kind of phrase alone is going to help a lot of people today if they listen for another reason. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And let me expand on that. You're welcome to say, because I think this will bring it full circle for everyone. When you choose your long form, that is now your thing. Because if you don't become the expert and elite in one area of your life with one place that people go, they're confused.
Yep.
They're distracted. They're confused. This is the same thing with people who have 14 offers. I'm immediately cutting it down to one, because if you want to make true impact and true income in your life, it's the power of one. It's you serve one person with one offer, with one platform. So anywhere else you post or you share or you nurture, all fingers point back to your house.
Yep.
So the question becomes, what's your house? You got to pick one if you really want to make a difference. And then you've got to stick with it for long enough for the house to become your foundation. Because I see another just thing where people will go wrong. They'll start the podcast, but it's not overnight success. And it doesn't feel glittery and shiny like social does, or like a TikTok video that might go viral. That feels exciting. It feels good. But what you're actually doing is now you're chasing this thing that feels good instead of chasing the impact, that something that goes unseen, the beautiful impact and change that you're making with a podcast goes so much deeper with people, but you may not hear it. The confirmation doesn't come through until your show's a little bigger and they start leaving you reviews and telling you. So I always tell my students, pick your house, and then you're going to go so deep into that, and you're going to commit that you will not move. You will not move from that house for 12 to 24 months. You won't see some of the fruits of that labor until people know you're for real.
Yep. 100%.
What we face is so much whiplash nowadays. You're like, oh, I started following someone, and then 2 seconds later, they were off teaching something different. You don't trust anyone anymore.
Yeah.
And so you have to become the trust in the world that people are praying for and searching for. Amen. By sitting in the house long enough for people to knock on the door.
Yeah. Or else it's mom. It's the concept of like, hey, is mom coming home tonight? Hey, is dad gonna do what he said he would do? Like that almost makes me emotional. Like really when you think about it, like and if we feel called to serve people, like we do have their lives in our hands. We have their finances in our hands. We have their dreams in our hands. And I think that we owe it and that's where the fact that there is such a low barrier of entry to become an entrepreneur now is an amazing thing, but also a really interesting thing because there are of course people out there that don't steward that well. But it's super, super important. So I mega appreciate that. I love the way that you put things. I have a couple more questions I'm very curious about. So this is obviously a guest type podcast for me right now with Sales Queen, which could change. I'm doing every third to fifth episode by myself. And
Mhm.
then my first podcast, Powerhouse Podcast, which is the number one pageant podcast,
Yeah.
were all solo episodes until I brought on my sister.
Okay.
And then we'd switch every other. Now, I'm naturally wired actually for I just want to be the one who talks and I can talk all day and I love it. And I definitely found over the last 5 years, I'm still getting testimonies. I just got one this morning of like, oh, I've been following you for 5 years. I'm like, how do we not know each other? Whatever.
Yes.
So, in your opinion, do you have a particular recommendation when people are starting out? Do you recommend people do solo podcasts because the authority it builds? Do they do guests? Is there a combo? Is there a reason why? And I'd
Yeah.
love to kind of start there and then I have a follow up.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing that I'm super keen on with podcasting is testing
Mm,
because we don't know what our audience is craving and needing. And so the
mm,
worst thing that we can do is model everyone else. So what I like to do is I like to start with a nice like 50-50 for everyone and of course for you, what do you prefer? Like I actually
yeah.
don't love doing as many interviews. So I skew more solo and then I do about 20% would be an interview, but that's just because of my preference.
Yeah.
Now, when someone's new and they're open, they're like, I like either. I like doing solos, I like interview. If you do 50-50, what's really cool is you can go into your analytics and start testing and reviewing those analytics after about 60 days and ask yourself of these top 10 downloaded of all time, what are they? Are they interview or are they solo? And you're going to see a trend from your people. Here's what else we test short, we test long. I
Yeah.
test short podcast titles, I test long podcasts. I'm constantly testing to find what is my audience craving. And then when I find something that seems to be a trend, I pour fuel on the fire because we tend to pour fuel everywhere trying to like start a fire, like whoop, whoop, whoop. No. Where's the fire already happening? Get rid of everything else and pour on one beautiful bonfire
Yeah.
and watch it explode. So we test. And I think that would be great for you, maybe doing a few more solos and then taking a look at what is my audience trending towards and then leaning into that a little bit more. And also, what do you love? Because
Yeah.
if you're not fueled, then you won't have fun. And I think that's the most important thing in this process is feeling fueled and like you're having fun because then you're going to serve from a place of authenticity too.
Yep. 100%. How do you structure capturing the leads? Because another kind of objection that I hear from a lot of people is they're nervous to put all this effort in, which is hilarious because same thing with social media. You could ask the same question, right?
Yeah.
Like, where are you getting those leads? And you for sure don't own any of that.
Right.
But with podcasting, what's kind of your model for taking people down the funnel? Is it a lead magnet? Is it a website they go to? How do you kind of now they have the episodes? How are we starting to connect with our audience?
Sure. So interestingly, what's crazy is that we make sales from the podcast every single day without ever capturing a lead. Often, the first time I ever see someone's name and email address is because they bought.
Hmm.
So what I've learned is that there are two people that might be listening to any episode. Person one is not quite ready to buy, but
Yep.
they're getting warm, they're getting used to me. So that lead would need to be captured, nurtured, or sold in some type of deeper capacity. Person two is just ready to go. So every episode, there's two options. Option one is to join our community. We have a Facebook group, or they can join a workshop that I have that is a free 40-minute workshop that will end up selling them one of my offers. Or to check out the website. I have some other free gifts. I have a quiz. Should you start a podcast? Right. So that person's like, oh, I'm not ready. So we're going to capture that lead. And then that lead's going to go through and just get to know us. They're going to hang in our community. They'll get some nurture emails. They'll get some freebies. We'll love on them whenever you're ready. But person B, in the same breath, I say, or are you ready? And I lean so into sales on every single episode. I never shy away from sales because it's my responsibility to get these people to walk this out with me and to stop waiting on themselves. And so every episode, Megan, I say, here's the free option if you're not ready. And here's the one, if you are ready to go with me, this is exactly what you're going to do right now. So people can buy or they can get on the list from every single episode. And that has proven to be an extremely profitable and low pressure from their end because they never feel pressured since I gave them the free option too. They're like, oh, she doesn't care, whatever. And I really don't. When you're ready, you're ready.
Yep.
But I will never let an episode go by where I don't mention how they take the next step because that's a disservice.
Yep. 100%. Okay, so diving a little bit deeper into the sales aspect, because now we've opened this door and obviously that's my heart and soul and what we're here for. So you're doing like an evergreen webinar style that you did one time and now is selling people into your program. And if you don't want to share anything, let me know if I'm going too deep.
I'm good.
But you have one program? Do you have multiple programs? And then what are the price points of kind of how people are working with you and what ultimately informed that price point that you're at now?
Yeah. So I have 3 offers.
Okay.
I was coaching for a long time and I had built a multi-6-figure coaching business, but I was so burned out. And I got to this point where I felt I cannot go above $800 an hour because now I feel weird. Like it was like for me, just a moral cap that I just couldn't pass.
Yeah.
So I was praying over, it was clarity coaching. It was like, I'm needed. I'm so needed. It has to be me. And my friend sat me down and she's like, stop it. Like, does it really have to be you? Like, there's got to be a framework that you're taking people through. And at this time I have a podcasting course called Podcast Pro University. And that one was already selling because people would coach with me and then say, oh, well, how do I start a podcast? And I had shown them how to start one. And that was very, you do this, you follow this, you click the thing. So I created my podcasting course that got them to start a podcast in 12 steps in 30 days. And that one was doing really well. That became a multi-6-figure offer, but I was still coaching. So at that point, I felt like I wanted to phase down a little bit because I had so many clients, great problem to have, but I was ready for some space. And so I created Clarify Your Calling as step 1. So step 1 course now, Clarify Your Calling, it's $297. That gives people clarity on what their business will be. It had to be super affordable, but enough to where they'd show up for it. It's 4 weeks. And it's fully passive. So they come in and take this one and now you have clarity. What's my business? Once they have clarity, they go to Podcast Pro University, which is course number 2. And now you start your podcast. And this is $697. And this is the one that the workshop sells into. So people can go and watch the workshop. It's how to grow your online business using podcasting in 2 hours, less than 2 hours a week. So they take the workshop and often buy the podcasting course. And then my third offer is called Podcast to Profit. And this is a 6-month group coaching program. It's $5,000. And this takes them through, I have a podcast, now what? To like podcast SEO, getting ranked, podcast visibility, pitching. We create your course. We create your coaching offer. We do your website. We do your email marketing. It's the whole, I believe in Stefanie's little funnel that she's proven to me, but I'm at the beginning over here with just a podcast and I don't know how to make this actually make money. And so that's a 6-month experience. I coach live group coaching in there. I've got a team, we've got coaches. It's a whole thing.
Yep.
And so that one, interestingly, which I think is crazy, we have 50% conversion from I'm going to take your podcasting course to coming into the big group coaching. 50% of people that spend $600 spend $5,000 to get the rest of the process done with me, which I think is super powerful to hear from a sales perspective. What's your one thing that you become a lead at, which for me was, let's start the podcast. Yep. You grow that past 6 figures. You do not get distracted till this thing is working. The fire is flourishing. Then these people are banging on the door going, what's next? What's next? Then you take those people to the next step with you. I think the ascension model can be 2 courses from multi-6-figure past $1 million.
Yep.
I really do. I think people have too many offers. I think it's confusing. And I think less is more. And it's taking your same person to the next step when you are ready for that next offer.
Yeah, 100%. I am in 100% alignment with that. I think it is so important to, like, otherwise we're doing people a disservice, and we if we don't have the bandwidth to actually serve people at the level that we want to serve, um, then ultimately it's going to affect their results, which affects our business, which affects our mental health, which affects, our marriages. Like,
Yes.
it's just this giant tumbleweed of things that can go wrong. And so, yeah, I think like simple is sexy, and it's
Mhm.
so like countercultural to what the world's telling us, like you said, with just noise and posting and all these different things.
Yeah.
And God is a God of, not a God of chaos or confusion, but a God
Right.
of peace. And I'm just like, it's really cool when you finally get to that place where you realize, like, and maybe you have a story that could go really well with this too, but like, if there was a moment, and I know with Instagram there certainly was, but where you were like, huh, maybe I don't have to live this way. Like, maybe I
Mhm.
could be successful and have peace. Maybe I
Yeah.
could be successful and feel like God's favor and his hand of blessing is all over my business. Like, was that the Instagram moment for you, or have you had other moments like right before you scaled, maybe, or right before you hit this mile marker where you were like, is it going to be this hard forever? Like, is it
Mm.
supposed to feel this way? Does anything
You
come to
know,
mind?
yeah. And what actually comes to mind for me, Megan, was I kept wanting that to be the story. Like, I want, and I hear this often, so often from my listeners too. Like, I wish I could be more present. I wish I had more time. I want more people. Like, the desire is so there and it's so
Mhm.
amplified, but we think it's not possible because the business isn't successful yet. So we focus so intentionally on, I'm going to grow the business and explode the business, and then I'll have time and peace and presence. And what happened was, it was like this. It went, oh, wait, I got off of Instagram and I surrendered. I let go of control. I just let go of it. And what happened was, it gave me back the presence, the purpose, and the time with my family, with my faith, with my health, all of it. And because I was fulfilled in the other areas that God had created me to be fulfilled in, there were all these
Mm.
other gifts that I was blocking by believing that success had to come just from the business. So when I got out of that and I got out of the way of what God wanted to create in my life as a fulfilling, peaceful, present life, I actually spent way less time and it started to just grow and expand and amplify. And the success started coming so beautifully and so quickly in these little pockets of beautiful time because I had removed myself from forcing it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I
Yep.
removed myself completely and said, God, it's yours. Use me in whatever capacity. I'm done controlling it. I just, you know what I need to live and to be able to give, and the dreams and the wishes that you've planted in my heart, make it happen. I'm going to
Mm.
just, I'm going to be here and I'm going to trust you. I'm going to follow you and I'm just going to walk this out with you. And the second I really meant those words and started to let go of all these things, it was like door would open, invitation would come. The girl that I never asked for knocked, can I have a job? I'm like, who are you? But absolutely. Like, everything just worked so beautifully and perfectly. And now I'm on the other side of it. And when I look at my life, I really feel, it feels like heaven on earth, as like maybe
Mm.
cliche as that might sound. It's like there's moments where I just like sit and I look at the aspen tree and I'm like, this is like heaven, right? Like, I can feel the presence of God in my life at such a higher level and in my business, but the business isn't this, it's not controlling me anymore. It's not, and I'm not controlling it. It's like we're walking together in tandem. And I believe that God's created the business as a piece of this full circle person that I am. Because if all
Mm.
I did is fixate on the business, I'm going to miss the blessings with my boys. I'm going to miss being able to spend a day volunteering at their school or just sitting and having lunch outside because I'm so fixated on I could use this time to grow leads. Like, that's not who God is.
Yeah.
So we have to begin and remove ourselves from the control of the outcome, and that's when it will start to work. And it's, success is not your business. Success is the fullness of your life in
Yep.
every area, the relationships, and yes, the finances, the fulfillment, the giving, the time, the missions that you stand up for, the things you believe in. Like, I heard something recently that resonated so much. It's like, stand for something. Like, what do you stand for? What is it that matters to you the most? It doesn't matter to you on accident. You're positioned to go and make an impact in those places of your life because that's why they're so important to you.
Yep.
So get out of the fixation on the money and the success and go chase the meaning and the things that God's asking you to do, and the rest of it will fall into place. That's the after effect, right?
Yeah. Amen. Absolutely. Well, I cannot believe it's been 45 minutes already. So, last question is, I'd love for you to tell everybody kind of what you're working on now. What do the next 6 to 12 months look like? And then a little bit about how they can connect with you, not on Instagram, and find your awesome podcast and anything else that you kind of want to leave the audience with. So, future, how they can connect, and then just parting words.
Yeah. So one fun thing I'm working on right now is starting to write a book. I've been going to be an author since I was 7. I wrote I'll be an author when I
Yes.
grow up. Had a weird limiting belief for a long time that I can't write. And so ended up just really letting go of that too. And I felt like this pressing on my spirit of like, just write. So I've just been writing, and I have all these stories, and it's going to be really fun to see how God wants to bring it all together. And so I'm just trusting him through that process. So it's been a cool challenge for me because I'm a speaker, not necessarily a writer. So it's been fun, but I'm having a great time. And then how can everybody connect with me? Well, my website is stefanigass.com. It's StefAnieGass. I've got a podcast, Online Business for Christian Women. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, I've got a free workshop, podcastforgrowth.com, like we talked about earlier, that shows you how to start using podcasting to grow your business. So all the free stuff's on the website, and the podcast is a great place to start. You can come check out, listen to have over 600 episodes to help you grow an online business completely free. Wow. And allow those to just help you and bless you on your walk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Stefanie. It was such a pleasure getting to know you today. And thanks everybody for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.